Hey guys, tonight we're going to take a long, meandering stroll through some of the great battles that supposedly changed the world. You know the ones, the big, famous names that history teachers love to scrawl across chalkboards in oversized capital letters while sighing deeply because, yes, we're gonna talk about Waterloo again. But don't worry, this isn't the kind of lecture where I try to pump you up with blood and glory. No shouting charge here. Instead, I want you to dim the lights, let the phone screen slowly roast your face, and imagine we're just floating gently through a battlefield, except without the mud, the dysentery, and the screaming horses. Just vibes. So let's start slow. Great battles. What even makes a battle great? The sheer body count? The political consequences? Or maybe just the fact that someone had a good enough PR team to make sure their side of the story made it into all the textbooks. Spoiler, it's usually that last one. Anyway, let's wander back, way back, to one of the most famous dusty fields in history, the Battle of Marathon, 490 BCE. So, Marathon. The Persians are in town. By town, I mean they're landing with a massive invasion force on the coast of Greece, because the Persians loved nothing more than flexing their imperial muscles. Greece at this point is not really Greece. It's more like a collection of bickering city-states with impressive abs, bad tempers, and a tendency to fight each other when they weren't busy fighting outsiders. Enter Athens. Athens is feeling spicy. They've recently gotten into democracy, which sounds cool, but in practice mostly meant rich guys yelling at each other in slightly more organized ways. The Persians, led by King Darius I, yes, that Darius, the one who liked titles long enough to fill a scroll, decided they weren't going to let Athens get away with supporting rebels in Ionia, because empires don't like rebellions. It sets a bad example. So Darius sends his fleet across the Aegean. The Persians land at Marathon, about 26 miles from Athens. Yes, the Marathon, the one that would later inspire sweaty people in running shorts to torture themselves for fun. Back then, though, it was just a beachhead. The Athenians, realizing they were outnumbered, did the logical thing. They begged Sparta for help. The Spartans in turn said, "Sure, we'll help, just as soon as we're done with this religious festival where we can't actually leave home because our gods are really picky about calendars." Convenient. So, Athens is basically left alone, except for some backup from their smaller neighbors in Plataea. Together, they muster maybe 10,000 men. Meanwhile, the Persians have 2 to 3 times that, plus cavalry. Not ideal odds. But here's the twist. The Athenians decided not to wait around. Instead of hiding behind their walls, they marched to Marathon, which sounds bold but also a little desperate. Their general, Miltiades, came up with the idea of thinning out the center of his line and reinforcing the wings. The plan was, let the Persians push into the middle, then wrap around and hit them from both sides. Basically an ancient pincer move. And somehow it worked. The Persians were stunned. Their cavalry wasn't fully deployed. The Greek hoplites, those heavy infantry guys with their big round shields and spears, pushed them back to their ships. The Athenians even managed to capture a few vessels, which was considered a pretty big flex. The aftermath? Athens suddenly felt like the hot new power in town. The idea that little city-states could stand up to the massive Persian Empire gave everyone a boost of ego. And it set the stage for a century of Greek drama. And when I say drama, I mean both theater and endless wars. As for the famous runner, the guy who supposedly sprinted all the way from Marathon to Athens to announce victory before dropping dead, well, historians aren't so sure about that story. Herodotus, our favorite gossip-loving historian, never actually mentions it, which means the marathon tradition might just be a later bit of myth-making. But hey, it's a good story. And if you've ever run one, you probably felt like collapsing too. So that's Marathon. One dusty field, one scrappy underdog victory, and centuries of inflated Greek egos. Now, let's drift forward now to another famous clash of mud and ego, the Battle of Hastings, 1066 CE. Yes, that one. The one with the tapestry. Or, more accurately, the one with the embroidery. Since it's technically not a tapestry, but don't tell that to anyone who already has the poster hanging in their living room. The year 1066 was basically the European version of a reality show finale. England had just lost its king, Edward the Confessor, who, spoiler, had not done a great job of producing heirs, which meant the throne was up for grabs, and everybody wanted it. Harold Godwinson, the local English guy, got himself crowned almost immediately, which was fast work. But across the channel, William, Duke of Normandy, was like, "Excuse me, Edward promised the crown to me, and Harold literally swore an oath on holy relics to support me. That's my chair." Meanwhile, Harold Hardrada from Norway also decided to toss his helmet into the ring because apparently three-way contests make for better drama. Poor Harold Godwinson had to deal with both. First, he rushed north to fight Hardrada at Stamford Bridge. That battle was brutal but decisive. Harold won, Hardrada died, and the Vikings basically gave up on conquering England after that. But Harold had no time to celebrate because William landed in the south with his Norman army. So he force-marched his tired troops all the way back down, which was great for cardio, but not great for showing up to the next battle already exhausted. At Hastings, the English formed their famous shield wall. The Normans tried to break it with cavalry charges, but the English held firm. Until, of course, they didn't. The Normans used a trick. They pretended to retreat, luring parts of the English line into chasing them, which opened gaps. Then the Norman knights turned around and charged right back in. Slowly, the shield wall crumbled. Harold Godwinson himself was killed, possibly with an arrow to the eye, although that detail might just be medieval meme culture. And with that, William became William the Conqueror. England got a brand new Norman ruling class, French words infiltrated the language, castles popped up like mushrooms, and basically the entire course of English history veered off in a new direction. All thanks to one very messy year and one very long piece of embroidery. Now, before you fall asleep on your arm, let's glide over to yet another field of mud and ego, the Battle of Agincourt, 1415 CE. This is the one Shakespeare made famous, with Henry V giving stirring speeches about "we few, we happy few, we band of brothers," which, let's be real, probably didn't happen. The actual Henry was more focused on making sure his archers didn't starve than on delivering quotable lines for high school drama students centuries later. Anyway, Henry V invaded France during the 100 Years' War, because apparently 100 years of fighting just wasn't enough. After some rough campaigning, his small army, riddled with disease and low on supplies, ended up facing a much larger French force near Agincourt. The French knights, brimming with confidence and very shiny armor, lined up to crush the English exhausted army. But it had rained heavily the night before, and the battlefield turned into a mud pit. Heavy cavalry plus mud equals disaster. Henry's longbowmen, stationed behind sharpened stakes, rained arrows down on the slow-moving French. Knights stumbled, horses slipped, and the whole advance collapsed into chaos. The English, vastly outnumbered, somehow pulled off a crushing victory. The result? English propaganda gold. Agincourt became the shining example of English pluck and French incompetence, repeated endlessly in poems, plays, and national myths. In reality, it was just a case of mud, arrows, and some very bad tactical decisions. Still, it gave Henry V enough leverage to claim he was basically heir to the French throne, which didn't actually stick, but hey, points for confidence. And so, 3 battles down. Marathon, Hastings, Agincourt. Each one endlessly romanticized, endlessly rehashed, and endlessly cited as a turning point in history, which, in fairness, they were. But they were also just messy, muddy days full of tired, cranky men who probably would have preferred to be literally anywhere else. But that's history. Big egos, bigger mistakes, and occasionally a tapestry.